Yesterday on Early Edition, we asked you how you would grade the Patriots after 6+ hours of free agency, and the Pats were not saved by the bell curve. Nearly 3/4 of you giving the Patriots yesterday either a D or an F. In case you needed a refresher of what the Patriots have done so far, they've been relatively busy, mostly signing their own guys. 7 of their 10 most notable acquisitions so far, players like Mike Giardi, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Brissett, they were either drafted or signed by Bill Belichick. All right, welcome into the deep dive. As we swap out one Tom for another, we got Tom E. Curran in the conversation. We would like you to join this talk as well. All right, you've had 30 hours now to digest what the Patriots have done. How would you grade them right now? C, right there in the middle, is leading the way. Of course, you can go to NBCSportsBoston.com/early edition. You can also scan the QR code. No Fs on that board. No Fs, Tom E. Curran. Are you feeling...
No Fs given.
No Fs? Oh, yeah, I see what you did there. Are you feeling better, worse, or about the same for how this Patriots team has approached free agency thus far?
I am pleasantly neutral because the thing is, had they lost guys like that, we knew they had to re-sign. They had to re-sign him when he was their best offensive lineman. They had to re-sign Hunter Henry because they didn't have any other tight ends, and he's a top 15 to 18 guy in the league. They had to bring Duggar back because he's a staple and it's one of the strong suits. And to me, Kendrick Bourne, it's a bonus. But on when it was the key, they brought him back. They paid him more, certainly. But had they let those guys go, an already absolutely despondent offense in tatters would have been worse off. So breathe a sigh of relief that the holes in the side of the boat have been plugged.
You know what I always say? Anytime you can bring back the core of a 4-13 team, you absolutely, positively have to do it. No, look,
Feel sarcastic when you say it that way.
It's like, where were the guys?
No, well, look, Onwenu, no-brainer. They had to do that. They should have done that last year, whether that's Bill, whether that's Kraft, whether it was both of them, whether Mike wasn't feeling it, whatever. It cost them a lot more money, but he's someone they had to keep. The rest of them, as far as I'm concerned, whatever. Hunter Henry, you overpaid for. You're giving $8 million guaranteed to Kendrick Bourne, who tore his ACL in late October. So even though things are going fine in his recovery, you're probably not seeing Kendrick Bourne, the real one.
What was your tight end solution? To interject.
Free agency, tons of it.
Dalton Schultz?
Noah
Hunter
Fant,
Henry was like the second
Colby
guy
Parkinson.
on there.
Right. 29 years old, coming off an injury this year, has 2 severe injuries in his career prior to getting here. Like, I might have thought about going younger. Right. I might have thought about just... I don't think that you can bring back the same core, with the exception of Belichick and Mac Jones, right? Those two guys, you shoot out the door. You've pretty much blamed everything on them, kind of, here, sort of, and say, oh, we're fine. Your locker room wasn't good last year.
Trent Brown's gone.
Yeah, it wasn't good in 2022. The Seeds were planning for a bad locker room in 2022. 2023 gets worse. You had a divide between offense and defense. But sure, let's bring everybody back. It'll be great because why? Again?
They're not bringing everybody back, though. The quarterback's gone. Devontae Parker's going to be gone.
Right.
Yeah, right.
The left tackle's gone.
Yeah,
Devontae Parker didn't speak, so...
Oh, no, I think he spoke. I think I've spoken to him actually a handful of times. It didn't go so well for me, generally speaking.
It didn't go well for me either, but that's...
I think what's interesting is the people who are pleasantly surprised with what's gone on, I think might have like a little bit of Patriots offseason PTSD, where it's like, oh my God, they showed a little bit of urgency. They signed one of their guys who's actually pretty good, and Mike Giardi. Yes, great. And then I think there are people on the other end who are a little too far on the other end in terms of being impatient. Calvin Ridley's still on the board. Tyron Smith is still on the board. Jonah Williams is still on the board. If these guys all fly off and they don't get any of them, then I understand it. I understand people being upset because people should want a season. The last 2 seasons were hopeless. You should have a season this year because you have the resources to spend. You have the needs to fill. There are players out there who can fill them. Make it work. But they have a couple days until all those guys fly off the board.
Last segment, though, you're not confident, none of us were, that Ridley's going to be here. Tyron Smith, like, again, we talk about the tax for sucking. Like, the guy hasn't won a title. Why is he going to come here? Again, you'd have to take all the money and then some more money and say, do that.
We'll see.
Where are they? That to me is what the essence of being a 4-13 team with the worst offense in football is. You're not going to rebuild it in a day. Guys aren't going to be beating the path to your door. And if the free agent crop out there is not suitable, you might have to say, I'm not buying that, like they didn't do with Nelson Aguilar a couple of years ago. And I don't blame him for taking a chance on Jonnu Smith. They were a pretty good team, should have been a good tight end. But I think you're right. You're right about the PTSD.
The roster's so bad, you have to see these guys as upgrades.
You're right about the PTSD.
They're upgrades, and they're going to give you a season. It's worth spending money on those types of players.
I shouldn't be breaking out the sheet cake just for bringing guys back. No. But
what was the line again? pleasantly
Pleasantly neutral. Pleasantly neutral. So he's a C. In layman's terms, that is a C. Like, we talked a lot about how this is like going to go from the Patriot way to the Packer way, but like, is this the Packer way, or is it kind of the old Patriot way where you sit and you wait and you have the money and either you don't spend it or you're forced to spend it on like middling guys because you have nobody on your roster?
To me, it's more the Packer way than the Patriot way, and Mike Owenu, I think, is the sign. Bill Belichick, in terms of players that have been drafted since 2014, position players. So take your specialists, your Jake Baileys, and your Joe Cardonas. They are people too, but they don't count in terms of this discussion. 5 players drafted since 2014 signed extensions with the Patriots. Mike Owenu is the 5th. That's 10 years that have gone by. 5 guys that they've drafted, position players, have been extended. That's a joke. Okay, so this to me is a signal, okay, we really are going to try to identify our core guys and keep them around. Bill Belichick didn't do that frequently enough. It's part of the reason the roster has devolved the way it has.
Which means you didn't draft well, so those players that you had when they came up for free agency said, we've seen enough of this guy, or he's too rich for our blood in the instance of Jacoby Myers, not drafted but developed. But it is good to see that 2 of the guys that they drafted, Onwenu and Duggar, are guys that they extended. 2 others are free agents taken in 2021. But to me, it's an NFL way of doing things. You build somebody up. He's part of your system. You say, well, let's keep this guy around. And that's why the Jacoby Myers thing was so jarring last year. If ever a guy deserved, and that locker room felt the exact same way from Devin McCourty on through, those are guys you keep.
Yeah, we tried that case then. We'll keep trying it because he would have been their best receiver. As of right now, he'd probably be the best receiver on their roster again today. And that they didn't keep him because of maybe some friction between he and Bill.
Yeah.
You know, in no sense.
No, go ahead. We talked obviously in the first block about wide receiver, but Giardi, for this free agent period to make you feel better about this team, what other positions do they need to address? Like, who needs to land on this roster this week for you to say, you know what? I'm slightly more than pleasantly neutral.
I would take the left tackle if it's Jonah Williams, who again, Jonah Williams is not a great left tackle. He's a solid player. You're going to sign him, and probably 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to go, what do we do there? Well, you did because you had to because you didn't have a left tackle, because you rolled the dice with Trent Brown for too long, and now you're going to have to go overspend on the guy. But you also want to make sure, as Phil said, you want to make sure that the rookie quarterback, whoever he is, whether it's Drake May, whether it's Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, whoever it is, that when he gets there, there's a modicum of protection in front of him. They can keep him upright so that the kid is not seeing ghosts and turns into another failed case in a first-round quarterback like Mac Jones did.
If you can get Calvin Ridley and either Tyron Smith or Jonah Williams, that to me is a very strong offseason and has set you up to the point where you can go to the draft. You're not backed into a corner in terms of forcing different positions. You can take your quarterback up high. You can take your receiver in the second round, which, again, sort of a Packer way thing to do. They don't like their receivers in the first round. They like them in the second. And then you're off and running. Then you do have hope. Then, in my opinion, you have a season. But if you miss out on 2 premium positions offensively in free agency entirely, tackle and receiver, that's a problem.
This is why I was saying Ridley. Like, I think I would take Kyle Duggar's money. I would have said, nope, I'm not transitioning him. I'm going to sign one of these veteran free agents for half the money, and I'm taking that $6.5 million I saved on him, and I'm putting it into Calvin Ridley's offer. I get it. Again, same thing. You're going to look at it and go, is he really worth that much money? Well, for your team right now, for what you need, yes.
Yeah, Curran, like right now you feel pleasant. You're a C, pleasantly neutral. Yeah. You're happy with how they brought it. But what if, to Phil's point, they don't bring in a Tyron Smith or a Calvin Ridley or a Jonah Williams? They don't really add any other big names. Then how are you going to feel about all this?
And it's not the names, it's the positions, more or less. But yeah, I'll be sinking to, if they don't come up with some kind of a solution and they're dipping into the draft for a wide receiver, solely dipping into the draft, that's a blow to your grade. You're going for a C-. If you don't find a tackle, which is to me the most important position to fill, you are going further into a D because you didn't address, there were 4 positions, really, to me. Corner, the least important, but there. Quarterback, wide receiver, tackle, throw in tight end too. And if you go through this process and come out with your pockets turned inside out at left tackle and wide receiver, except for Kendrick Bourne, you just haven't done yourself enough of a service going toward the draft.
You guys have mentioned, everyone's mentioned it very briefly in the first block about the suck tax. I think, Mike, you mentioned it here. How much is that playing a factor? Like, and are the Packers and Eliot Wolf looking at it and saying, listen, I know we have a lot of money, but I don't want to do what the Patriots did in 2021 and vastly overpay for a bunch of guys and then not get good production out of them when I feel like, you know what, we're not going to be great next year anyway, so let's keep that money in the bank, and as we get better, let's draft those positions instead.
Bill had a great point on this, and he talked about it in the pod that Eliot Wolf is in a unique situation.
Yeah, he is in some ways playing for his job here, right? What Tom and I have both reported is that the Patriots are going to be conducting interviews for front office people after the draft. And Eliot Wolf still has the same title that he had coming into this offseason as scouting director. He's been given control of the 53 if there needs to be a tie broken by Robert Kraft, but that's not in writing yet. I just wonder if it's not human nature to be Eliot Wolf and to be looking at this and saying, I would really love for this job to be mine for the next several years, not just for this offseason alone. So is it in my best interest to go hog wild in free agency and start making it rain on defensive ends and corners and receivers and tackles when my owner's sitting up in his office and saying, do we really need to be spending all this money? I just did that a couple years ago. It didn't work out so hot. So I wonder if that, I haven't been told that. I'm not reporting that he's been limited at all by ownership, but I just wonder if it's human nature, given the uncertainty, relative uncertainty of his future here in New England, if that is at all at play.
And I think that would be anathema to Kraft to hear that he was feeling that way, because I think Kraft really is concerned, both Jonathan and Robert. Look, we want to spend. We got to eliminate this feeling.
Optics are big for them right now.
But I think that right now, if you are hearing the conversation that's gone on in the region, then you might say, well, they might say that, but do they really mean that? Because it's in constant conflict.
And it was the way they succeeded. It was part of the reason Bill Belichick
part of their
would say
DNA.
value. That was Bill Belichick's way. That was the Patriot way. It's part of the reason they
blew the value
had
on
some
Matt.
success.
Well, guys, if you average out the
Tom.
B's and the D's, which I think if you put those together, you kind of make them C's. So it seems like most people think it's about a C grade right now for the Patriots. All right.